So kind of the next thing now we want to go on to is there's a third type of, which is probably the one you want to be using the least, but it's there and you want to be aware of it, because sometimes there are only things you can solve it this way, because there are cases where computed doesn't work, as we mentioned. So there's a more general property called watch. And watch is very powerful. Now to set up watch, what we do is we define functions like we did in methods and computed, but now the functions have to be named after a property in data. So for example, we'd have to create a watch called counter2, which is a function. I'm going to use the old style. Yep. So this function gets called whenever counter2 is changed. And it gets passed in the new value of counter2. This maybe also seems kind of nifty. You guys following along?
Yeah.
Or you guys I can hear some typing. I presume you're just typing.
Furious typing as I'm trying to type out what you've written.
It's all right.
Could you just explain the purpose of that?
The watch?
Yeah.
So the watches in general are used to solve problems that you can't do inside computed. So, or another way, I mean, they can, so for example, computed, again, they're only ever for like changing, like transforming the data and spitting it out in a different format. With watch, you can basically do anything, again, like a method, but it has the advantage that it's only called again when the relevant value is changed. So one of the common cases you'd use for watches would be the asynchronous stuff, like I mentioned before. The other difference between a watch and a computed is, again, the watch, we actually get in this new value passed into the function. So we can kind of basically, the watch gets called before the data is changed, whereas computed happens after the data is changed. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you can actually intervene here if you wanted to, although you shouldn't, because it might cause some weird stuff to happen. You know, let's make a very simple watch to begin with that just prints out new value. The other thing to note with watches is, again, this name here, counter2. This has to be counter2. We can't just call this anything we like. It has to match the name in data. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And because of this reason, you know, the other difference between a computed and a watch is we can't. In computed, we had to return something. In watch, it's kind of the opposite. Like in watch, you'd never want to return something because we can't just use it with the, you know, we can't use the value of this function in a pair of curly braces. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's kind of the other way around computed. What we can use it for is asynchronous stuff. So one common example would be, say you want to reset this second counter to 0 automatically after 10 seconds or 5 seconds. By the way, see down here in the console. So at the moment, I'm just console.logging the new value, and see that that is working as you would expect. We could also console.log the current value of counter2, this .counter2. If we refresh.
Rob, where have you defined new value?
What do you mean, where have I defined?
As in, sorry, like what is the input of new value?
So counter2, this function here, or any watch function.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll hopefully this will make sense here. Gets passed in as an argument the value that has been changed.
Oh, okay.
But you can also, as you can see here, you can also access the old value just by using this.counter2.
This.counter2. Right. Okay. So, for example, this.counter2 gives you the old value. The function. the input to the function gives you a new value.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the old value before it was changed.
No, it's not. It's they're still the same value. They're both got
They're the same value. Okay, ignore that.
That's weird.
Is it standard to you to call it new value, or is it like that?
I don't know. Let's have a look in the documentation, see what they call it. I don't actually know. You see here, there's stuff here like computed property versus a watch property.
Yeah, I was having a read through it. It's they call it val, I think.
Yeah, val, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't know why you can't use this dot first name. So yeah, here for example, in general, by the way, so like for example, they've got this example here is actually quite nice. So they've got in data. So the way you would do it using, say you want to, you've got a first name and a last name stored as data properties, and you want to display the full name. Yep. The way in watch that you do it, so if you're using watches, would be that you would update first name whenever you sense a change to the first or the last name. Yep. The computed property way of doing it would just be to actually not have full name as a property on data, and you just make a computed property called full name, which would return the name with just some of the names. Did that make sense? Yep.
Blanked out for like 15 seconds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'm a bit...
Good.
So I'm just following the example in this on the guidance here.
Yeah,
so,
let's go.
They want to make something they want to make just a demo here that just prints out the full name. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the data, they've got someone's first and last name stored as separate variables, which you might for various reasons. The way of doing that, the way of creating the full name using watches is that you'd have to add a data property called full name to the data property, and then you'd have to watch for any changes to the first or the last name and update the full name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You see how that works? Like so, whenever first name get changes, they update. They set full name equal to the first name plus a space plus the last name.
Yeah.
And then they do the inverse for the last name. This is kind of really ugly, and it's really slow. And it says here, the above code is imperative and repetitive. Imperative, by the way, means that your imperative basically means whenever you're doing stuff where you're setting things equal to things. That's what imperative means, and you end up having lots of variables. As you can see, the computed property way of doing it is much better. You just write full name.
Yeah.